The Olympus Pen E-P5 is still a very popular camera in 2024. Let me tell you why I think that is. The Olympus Pen cameras, and in particular the E-P5, remain very popular cameras to this day. And one might ask why that is, considering how old some of these cameras are getting. But in fact, the prices on these cameras is higher than it was a few years ago, like 5 years ago when I bought them. My first EP1, I paid $50 for this camera. Now you're probably close to triple that to buy one. And this EP5 that I've now had for, I don't know, close to that 5 years, I think I paid like $189, $199 for it, just under $200 for it. And I think now you see them sometimes as high as $350. So these cameras remain pretty popular, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Now, to kind of understand why that is, you kind of have to go back to the original EP1. The EP1 was their first mirrorless camera, and Olympus really spared no effort in terms of designing and building this camera. Camera's not heavy, but it's got good heft to it. It's a good size. The covers, the body, it's all metal. It's not a plastic camera. I mean, and it feels like it's got some, it's substantial. It doesn't feel like some lightweight plastic point and shoot camera that you might pick up. And the camera performed really well. And so the EP1 followed by the EP2, 3, and then the 5. There was no 4. I talk about this in a previous video about the EP5. The number 4 in Japanese sounds like the word death, so I'm guessing they just didn't want a camera that sounded that way. It's like EP death, So the EP5, introduced in October of 2013, was the fourth camera in the generation, had a lot of improvements over the previous versions. And it's got enough good features and capability that even today, it remains very popular. Of all the videos I have, the video I have about why I think the EP5 is going to be a classic in terms of digital cameras is by far my most popular video. I mean, it's just none of my other videos come close to it. And even in all my other videos, the comments that I get about the Olympus Pen cameras, I get more comments about the Olympus Pen cameras, and the EP5 in particular, than I do really just about anything else. The Olympus Pen cameras still have a really strong following. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. The first thing is, I think there's this, I think they call it the Digicam craze, where people are buying old point and shoots that have CCD sensors. Now, this is not CCD, but there's just a whole generation of young people that have grown up, and the only thing that they've ever used to take a picture with is their cell phone. From the time they were old enough to take pictures until adults, they had a cell phone in their hand. They took pictures, and I think a lot of them are deciding that it would be really cool to have an actual camera, something that, was dedicated to that, something that had a bit more capability than a phone camera. And this whole Digicam thing is, I think, part of this. The Olympus Pen line of cameras, of course, includes the least expensive of them was the EP-M or the EP Mini series, which are very plain, have hardly any features, and they're small, they're very compact. And then the next level up is the EP-L series, and I've done a video on the EP-L5. It was my first Olympus digital camera. Really love that camera. It's a great little camera. Also, what's kind of fueling it is there's a very strong movement right now for street photography, where you just go out on the street and you take pictures of the people and things around you, and you want something that's small and compact. And you see that with the Ricoh, the GR3 series of cameras are very popular. They bring a really high price. And those Olympus EPL series cameras are in that size range, and they have interchangeable lenses, and they're very affordable. And so I think there's a number of different reasons that these things are remaining popular, but there's still people looking for these things. And again, I think the price kind of tells the tale there. Plus, like I say, the number of questions I get about the Pen series cameras, and the number of you look at the viewing counts on videos about some of the Olympus Pen cameras, and they're not gigantic like maybe some things, but they're significant. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people looking for them and at them. So, you've got a solid build, you've got good heft and feel. I think I've mentioned that I used to, pardon my raspy throat. I'm really literally just getting over COVID, so I'm still struggling with that a little bit. But I used to shoot rangefinder Leicas, both the M and the screw mount Leicas, and when you carry around something like a Leica, you're carrying around something that's really well made and it's high quality, and you're proud to own it, and you feel good about owning it. And that's the sense I get with these Olympus Pen cameras. Solidly built, metal construction. There's a substantial feel. You don't feel like you've got something cheap in your hands. They feel like a precision instrument, and of course they deliver great pictures. So I think there's a lot of that. It's got good ergonomics. There's just a lot that makes you feel good about owning and using one of these. And I think when you pick one of these up, and one of the first things you'll notice is you'll pick this camera up, and if you're used to looking at point and shoot cameras, you're going to go, well, it's not heavy, but it's substantial. It's got good heft to it. It feels good. It feels solid. So I think that plays into a lot of its popularity. Once you get your hands on one of these, you're going to like it. The next thing I think that really plays into the popularity of this Pen E-P5 is the features that it has. It has enough features to really do most of the things that I want to do, and most photographers, certainly even advanced photographers, are well served by the features in this camera. So it's number one at 16 megapixels, and I've said this before, that's plenty of pixels to make really prints as large as I would ever want to print. I've talked about this in the past. I worked for a photo studio. We used Fuji S2s, and they were CCD cameras. They were 6 megapixels, 6.2 I think, and we made 16 by 20s regularly. They look gorgeous. And 16 megapixels, for the average photographer, it'll make prints every bit as large as you're going to want to make. It's plenty of pixels. Number two, and one of the main reasons I got into these mirrorless cameras is I like using vintage lenses and manual focus lenses. The E-P5 has focus peaking. It was the first of the Pen series cameras to have focus peaking, and also has a magnifier, so you've got a couple different tools there to very quickly and easily manually focus lenses on this camera. And so it's a real joy to use vintage lenses on them. You don't have to make any special settings in terms of, I know with the Panasonic cameras you have to actually tell the camera that you don't have a lens on the camera, and when you put on a vintage lens. On these you don't have to do that. You just put the lens on and turn on the focus peaking, and I have focus peaking set to this function button right here, and I can just hit that button, focus peaking's on, I can do my focusing. If I want to turn the focus peaking off, I can hit the button again, and the magnifier is a little button. It's actually got a magnifying glass right there, and I can hit that if I want the central area to be magnified, if I really want to critically focus something. What I've learned is you can actually turn on the magnifier and the focus peaking, and it'll show you that much magnified view and the focus peaking. Those two things together, you can really quickly really nail your focus if you need to. The next thing is this has a 1.04 million dot 3-inch LCD, and it's a touch screen. So if I let me turn on the super control panel. You've got the super control panel that has all your settings, and you can use the touch screen to set those, or you can use the controls to do it, either one. This also has the capability where you can touch the screen where you want it to focus, and it will focus on that spot and take a picture automatically. So if if you've got your subject off center, which often in compositions your subject's not centered, and you can manually move your focus area around, but in a lot of cases it's faster just to turn on that touch feature, and you just touch where you want it to focus, and it focuses and takes a picture. And so it can be really handy. And I have found that it is really better to, and you get more accurate focusing if you'll actually move your focus area or do that thing with the touchscreen, rather than leaving your focus area in the middle and then focusing and then recomposing. If you're shooting at a long distance, it's probably not going to matter much, but if you're shooting something up close, it can make a difference, and it can actually cause your focus to be, it won't be way off, but it could be just a tiny bit off if you do that. And so being able just to touch the screen where you want it to focus and let it take a picture is an awesome feature. I like that a lot. This does have a tilt screen, and it tilts 50 degrees down, which is really just the right height to hold this thing up over your head if you want to like shoot over people and see the screen. It's really just the perfect angle for that. It also tilts 80 degrees up, and this to me is kind of like a waist level finder. I grew up shooting twin lens cameras, so this is pretty comfortable for me to hold the camera close to my chest, look down at the screen. And one of the nice things if you're doing street photography or pictures of people, even family members, and you really don't want them to realize you're taking their picture, when you're looking down at the camera, even though it's pointed at them, you're not looking at them, so they don't really necessarily perceive that you're taking their picture. And it's a very good way to be able to take people's pictures without them really feeling uncomfortable like you're pointing a camera at them. When you hold a camera up at face level, even though it's just the screen you're looking at, or even your cell phone, people know you're taking their picture, and then they act differently. They tend to be shy about it. They don't just keep doing what they're doing. But when you're looking down at that screen, it works great. The next thing, this has Wi-Fi capability. So I can turn on the Wi-Fi, I can sync it with my phone, I can use the Olympus app on my phone to trigger the camera. So if I want to trigger it remotely, I can do that if I'm like taking a group picture and I'm in the group. I can actually have my app kind of down where you can't see it, and I can actually trigger the camera remotely. And so that's a real handy deal to have. This has one of the greatest features. Olympus's image stabilization is amazing. It's 5-axis image stabilization, and I can't tell you how much I enjoy the image stabilization on this camera. I recently went to a museum and took a bunch of pictures, and it was pretty dark, and I handheld some exposures at a 1/4 second, some even at a 1/2 second, and I was able to get sharp pictures. If I could just brace myself against something and steady the camera, that image stabilization, it's just amazing how much it helps keep your images sharp when you're hand holding pictures. It just does an amazing job, and I can't imagine not having that on a camera these days. Okay, so the next thing I really like about this camera is 1/8,000th of a second top shutter speed. That's fast enough that you can shoot relatively fast lenses, like an f1.8 lens. You can shoot it in bright sunlight with the lens wide open. So if you're wanting to get the effect of a wide open lens, even though the light's bright, you can do that. Obviously, 1/8,000th of a second is going to freeze, action or motion really well, and so 1/8,000th of a second. I mean, there's cameras that have better than that now. That's fine, but an 1/8,000th of a second is pretty fast, and will let you do some things you couldn't do with a slower camera. This also, because of the fast shutter, has a 1/320th of a second flash sync speed, which is fast enough if you want to do daylight fill flash with like an electronic flash and the camera. You've got a fast enough sync speed to do that. The next thing, and I have really, to be honest, I haven't played with this that much. I did a little bit when I first got it. This has an intervalometer in it, and you can actually set it up to do time-lapse videos. So you can set the intervalometer on it, and for different rates, and you can set it up obviously on a tripod, and you can do time-lapse pictures with it or video with it. It's a pretty cool feature. Like I say, I haven't had a great deal of use for that, but it's a feature this has, and while this only does 1080p video, for a lot of uses, that's plenty, and the intervalometer is kind of fun to play with. So this next thing this has is a 9 frame per second burst speed. So if you're shooting like sports, your kids playing baseball or whatever, 9 frames a second. It's not as fast, again, as some modern cameras, but it's pretty fast, and I think it's good enough for a lot of uses. This does have a built-in flash, so I don't use it a whole lot, except when I'm using a macro lens with a diffuser. It's powerful enough to hit my diffuser and throw a little extra fill light on my subject in macro. So I use it for that. The last thing, and I have to say I haven't purchased one, though I've really recently been considering it as one of the electronic viewfinders. There's the VF, well, I think the original VF1 was optical, but VF2 through VF4 are electronic viewfinders. Each one gets a little bit better in terms of image quality. This was made for the VF4, and it'll work with the older ones too. So anyway, there's a lot of great features in this camera, and I haven't hit on all of them. Those are the ones that kind of stuck out to me, and certainly some that I use and enjoy. So I think that's another thing about this camera, is it's got a really rich feature set, and makes it a lot of fun to use. Another thing that I think is one of the reasons for the popularity of the pen cameras in general, and the EP5, as a part of that, is the size and the weight. It's compact, especially with a pancake lens. This is the 20mm Panasonic f1.7 pancake lens. I like it for its size. I know Olympus, I have the 17 f2.8 pancake, and Olympus makes a 14-42 zoom that collapses like a pancake lens. And they're good lenses, nothing wrong with that, but this Panasonic actually has really excellent image quality. It's fast relatively at f1.7, and nice and compact. It lives on this camera. I put a lens hood on it when I'm out in the bright sunlight. But if I just am going to grab a camera and take it with me, it's going to be this camera with that 20mm lens. That gives me a 40mm equivalent. It's compact enough, it'll certainly fit in a coat pocket, and if I'm carrying it around, it's not heavy. It's just a great combination kind of camera. Without having something big and bulky, you can have a camera with you that will capture pro quality images, and it's fun to use too. So I guess the last real thing I'd have would be to say is I love the way the controls work on this. Like I said, it has the super control panel, which is, if you've ever used that on an Olympus camera, it gives you access to really all the controls you would need for the most part. There's some other things you can go through the menus to get to. All the dials and buttons are programmable on it. The dials you can control which way they increment up or down depending on which direction you rotate them. You can choose what the different buttons and dials do, and that way I can match like my EM5 Mark II, and I've got an EM5, and I've got this, and I can set them all up so basically the same buttons more or less do the same thing on all three cameras. So if I pick one up, if I want to change the aperture, it'll be the same dial that I'm turning and in the same direction. And so that's really nice. And I just love the way the controls work on this. And that super control panel makes it so easy to very quickly access a menu where you can see everything. You can choose what you want to set, make a quick change, and go on about shooting without having to drill down through a bunch of menus. I think now on their more current cameras, the super control panel is default. On these older ones, you have to go through a couple steps to turn it on. But if you have any of the Olympus rather than OM Digital Solutions cameras, and if you don't have the super control panel set up, even on the old EP1, there was a super control panel. And if you don't have that turned on, there's a lot of videos online on how to find it and turn it on. It's not hard. Once you've done it on one or two cameras, you'll be able to remember it. It's really pretty easy. But the super control panel is very good for making quick adjustments. And I think one of the complaints some people had about the Olympus cameras early on was that the menus were maybe not as easy to use. But once you set up that super control panel, if you do that, it's a breeze. I find it very easy to use, and so I really like it. I think the camera has good ergonomics. It's comfortable to hold and use. The buttons, the shutter buttons, just exactly in the right place, for my fingers anyway. Dials are easy to reach. All the buttons and controls are easy to get to. I don't know. It's just, to me, the feel of this camera, the ergonomics, I think it's a good looking camera too. I think the EP5, all the Olympus Pen EP series cameras are just really good looking cameras. I mean, I have this, I never thought I'd have a white camera, and but I found this, it was only $50. It was so cheap I had to buy it. But I was immediately impressed with it, and when I bought this, I wanted one that was all black rather than chrome and black, and the finish on it has really been good. I don't know, it's probably not paint, but it's, as much as I've used this, the only place it's wearing is, you can see these little dots where it's got like little feet that it stands on when you like set it on a flat surface. The finish has worn through on those little dots. And that's the only place I've really got any finish wear. It really has despite a lot of use, the camera still looks great. And I don't know, it's just I think a beautifully designed camera. It's a good looking camera. I love using it. Makes me feel good to pick it up and use it. And I think that's one of the big things about it is once you have one of these Olympus Pen cameras, you just really get attached to them. So anyway, those are kind of some of the good things I like about it. But let's do talk also really quickly about some of the downside, some of the negative things. And you know, any product has some problems. There's nothing perfect out there. And there's a couple things for the EP5. If you're buying one of these used, a couple things you want to look for. The big one I hear about are people that have dial failures. This rear or front dial quits working. I haven't had any issue with mine, and I hope that I don't. But I see every now and then, I've had people write me and say, you know, I bought one of these, but the dials didn't work, so I had to return it. And I think, you know, if you're buying one of these used, and if it's certainly like on eBay or something, you want to ask them if those dials work. Have them verify that they work. And make sure you're buying from a dealer that will accept returns if there's a problem. And always make sure you're buying from a dealer that has a really high rating. The other way to do it is go through, excuse me, KEH or MBP or one of those companies that'll give you, I think MBP gives you like a 6-month warranty. I'm not sure about that. But what all those companies do is they check the cameras, they make sure they function properly, and if there's a problem, they generally list that. And if there's a problem, they'll make it right. They'll take it back and refund you or whatever. And so you might pay a little bit more if you go through one of those companies, but you're probably going to get something that you can have some confidence when you get it that it's what they say it is and it's going to work. So that's something. The dial failures, I can't say every time I make a video with the EP5 that someone tells me about that, but I have made enough videos about the pen cameras in general that I've heard 3 or 4 times now about someone with a dial failure problem. So there's that. The other thing is you'll hear people talk about is that this camera came out and then there was a big problem with shutter shock. And there was a problem. It mainly affected images when you were around, I think around a 15th, maybe a 30th, 1/8 of a second, right in that range, that the shutter would cause some image vibration. If you have an EP5 or if you buy one, make sure that it's got the latest firmware. You can, Olympus has a website you can go to where you can download, connect your camera to your computer, and you can download the latest firmware. The latest firmware has a fix for that, and that you can implement. And I've got the latest firmware in this, and to be honest, it's been so long now since I set it up, I forget exactly how it went, but there is actually a place where you can turn on a setting that helps cure that shutter shock issue. And to be honest, I shot a ton of pictures with this camera, even before I had the latest firmware, and I never noticed a problem. I'm guessing there's certain circumstances it may show up in. I've never had an issue, and certainly now with the firmware, the latest firmware, which I've had that in there most of the life of the camera, I've never had any issues, and I shoot pictures kind of all over the place in terms of shutter speeds with this thing. So shutter shock, something you're going to hear some people say, oh, it's got shutter shock issues. But if you have one or if you buy one, just make sure you got the latest firmware, and I think you'll be fine. The other thing is there is no factory repair on these anymore. So if you buy one and it craters for some reason, which unfortunately anything can break, in all reality, it would probably be as expensive to have it repaired as it is to just buy another good one. So unfortunately, they don't make it anymore. They don't. Since Olympus switched to OM Digital Solutions, they no longer supported this, and that's unfortunate. But it's what it is. They're not so crazy expensive that it's not like you're spending $1,000 or $1,500 for a camera with no support. You're paying, maybe $275 to $350 for a camera, and I've had this one now for going on 5 years and used it a ton. I've not had any problems at all. I think it's a very reliable camera. If this one were to die tomorrow, now used to be a camera repairman by trade. I'd probably try to see if I could fix it if it was something I felt was fixable. Otherwise, I'd probably just go buy another one. I like the camera that much. I'd probably just buy another one. And again, you know, I have to say, I've been using this camera for over 5 years, a little over 5 years, and I've certainly gotten my money's worth out of it. Absolutely. And if it died tomorrow, I wouldn't feel really terrible, you know. But anyway, like I say, if you buy a used one, and if you're uncomfortable about that, getting one like from I noticed MBP had several. I get a thing on Facebook where they show a bunch of cameras for sale, and they always seem to have 3 or 4 EP5s listed in all these you know, the cameras they have listed. And I think they're around $350. I think is what I remember seeing them at. But as I recall reading their ads, they have a 6-month warranty. So, you know, there's places like that that you can buy, and there's other dealers too. I get a lot of stuff online. I see ads for different camera companies. A lot of those companies have some kind of warranty, even if it's just 30 days or 60 days, 90 days, something that lets you use the camera for a little while and make sure everything's working good. And if there's a problem, they'll make it right. So anyway, I think that, you know, the EP line of cameras is going to be around for a while in terms of its popularity. I noticed recently, I saw a notice from OM Digital Solutions that they had solved some of the supply chain issues that they were battling, and that the EPL10 is not only back in production, it's actually back on the shelves ready to sell. So there is some commitment on OM Digital Solutions' part to keep part of that Pen series alive. I'm not sure how long that'll maintain. If you're wanting to get something brand new, that EPL10, probably something good to look at. It's got a lot of neat features, and obviously you're going to spend more than you'd pay for one of these, but you know, you'd have a new camera with a warranty and all that. So the Olympus Pen cameras, I think they're going to be around a while. I think the EP5 is going to be popular for some time to come, and I'm going to keep using mine. So if you have one, or if you're wanting to get one, I think you'll be happy. They're a great little camera. Well, I appreciate you watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave me a comment. And as always, thanks for watching.